The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com.
Now, from The Signature, a division of Esquire Bank Studios.
This hour of the Shaun Thompson Show is sponsored exclusively by DonleyAuctions.com. They need your guns. Sell for top dollar. DonleyAuctions.com.
I love America. I love the Constitution. I love the First Amendment. I want to carry and all guns. I love it, property. And let me tell you something. If you care about your country, read Ludwig von Mises and the 6 lessons of the Austrian Economic School, motherfuckers.
From the streets of Melrose Park to the trading floor of the Merc, he's fought for every dollar he's ever earned. And now, with personal liberty and our system of capitalism under assault in America, he's here to seize back our rights from the government. With a cigar in one hand and a copy of the Declaration of Independence in the other, he's Shaun Thompson. And this is the Shaun Thompson Show.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag. Ooh, they're red, white, and blue.
I think this is the most interesting time to be alive in the last 100 years. I really do. This is where the rubber meets the road. And should we fend off the rise of the repulsives and the Fourth Reich and the fascists and the Nazis and the Soviets, it'll be due to law, which is why my next guest is so very important to always keep in touch with. His government service includes clerking at the United States Court of Appeals and working in the United States Department of Justice. He is now, thank God, a professor of law at the University of Arkansas, Little Rock. Professor Robert Steinbuch, how are you?
I'm great, my friend. How are you?
Very good, very good. This is really exciting times. There's a lot of cases coming down, a lot of what I think is the bastardization and weaponization of judges, stifling this particular administration's agenda, but moreover, kind of outing themselves as what they are. I think it's actually nice to see my accusations be validated when I see a federal judge who should never have the appointment, because I don't believe Joe Biden was legitimate in the first place. But when we have these unqualified people put in very important positions, and they come out and they try to stifle an executive order or an agenda, it's interesting to see how it really works. For instance, we could hire anybody as a president to represent our desires and our wants and our needs. And it really doesn't matter if you have enough judges in the federal system that can upend any policy.
Well, it's certainly true. I mean, which one are you speaking of specifically?
Well, I think the birthright citizenship, and I think the way in which that was really tackled. And I say this to you because, it's been a scandal for years since the 80s. There used to be a television show that was really rather good. It was an investigative reporter show before it became a propaganda show called 60 Minutes. And in the 80s, it did this expose in California about the Chinese communists and how they were having these birthing hotels and they were houses. Well, it never stopped. And we have millions of people who were born here and went back to China, born here, went back to Europe, and yet they're entitled to all of our entitlements. You still have the problem where you have illegal aliens from South and Central America come here, break all of our laws, live in complete anonymity, participate in nothing, receive virtually everything, and their kids are citizens. So it was interesting. I think this was a big reason Donald Trump was elected. He did what he could, but yet judges decided we're not going to do it that way. I mean, I understand there was a Supreme Court case. I just don't agree with it. What do you think?
I think it's one of the toughest questions, because what do you do with a document, a 200-plus-year-old document, 250-year-old document that has been interpreted a few times on the critical language, and, of course, even that interpretation is not binding if it's wrong, that never spoke to the circumstances that we confront today. And so I said this in an interview right after the Supreme Court came out with its opinion, lengthy opinion, lengthy dissent. And I said, I lean slightly towards the dissent. I lean to believe that the language doesn't restrict the president from stopping birthright citizenship. But I also struggle to disaggregate the fact that I recognize this is a problem clearly not contemplated by that language in the first place. So what do you do when you have language that just antiquated, and no one contemplated the type of behavior that we are confronted with today. That's probably the most difficult type of constitutional problem that you face. And so I sort of derive a rule, and we'll see how long that rule holds, that when you're dealing with that kind of intellectual difficulty and language that clearly is separated from the contemporary environment, you've got to consider that environment as part of the analysis, where generally, we as conservatives say we just look at the language, but the language doesn't really tell us that much. And so that's that's the hardest question I think one confronts in engaging in constitutional interpretation.
Well, it's interesting the way the argument is controlled and the perspective that is given. It negates the hundreds of years of our Congress, which has crafted laws. There are 8 pathways to citizenship. 8. Mm-hmm. And they've been doing this my whole life. We're going to have a comprehensive immigration reform. Well, we have 8 ways to do it. 2 of them include relationships and marriage. So you have those. So in that, relationships is also some of the birth rights that are here when you're here, temporary, protected, and all the other things that are in there. But the other ways are very simple, and that is you can come here legally. We have 36 million people who did. What I think I'm most perturbed about is, why should there be any excuse to not do it if it's there? It's not like there isn't a way to do it. There is a way to do it. And all you have to do is disclose who you are. It has to be a period. You have to meet certain barriers. And in some cases, you don't have to meet certain barriers. But the number one thing is disclosure. So to me, to step back at this and look at the pathways, look at the 36 million people who did it, and then look at the people who specifically and intentionally do not do it. These are the people who intend to be nefarious. They intend to be a criminal. I see it no other way. Now, you could say illiterate, but I don't know if that floats anymore. I mean, after all, what document in this country do we not print in 50 different languages? So even if you don't speak English, we probably can give you a document in the language you know. So I think it throws away all of the hundreds of years of law that has been done, all of the immigration reform that has been done. And it also is a slap in the face to all the people, the 36 million that do it the right way. I find it hard to tolerate.
Well, all of that, or almost all of that, is a policy argument, and precisely the right policy argument. Meaning you can't run a country where people can sort of cheat their way into citizenship. So I agree entirely with that notion. And the way, given what the Supreme Court has now ruled, the way to resolve this ongoing problem, because the opinion doesn't resolve the problem. It just says you can't get rid of people who are born here. The way you resolve the problem is precisely the way the president is resolving the problem. You stop people from coming in illegally in the first place, or those who are here illegally, you remove them. I saw a few articles about different people. This guy's been here for 20 years, and they deported him, and he doesn't even know his home country. Yeah, that's the downstream consequences of illegal immigration. And people are like, well, it's really unhappy. It's really sad. Well, yeah, to some extent, that's a true statement. And by the way, many of these people are perfectly nice people, and I have no individual problem with them. But that doesn't make their activity legal, and you can't have a country and run a country that has no immigration control. It's just absurd. Nobody else does this.
No. And you know what else it negates? It sweeps under the rug. It sweeps under the rug of what it is. What is the value in being a U.S. citizen? What really is the value? The value is that because of corrupt policies, as I see them, but you have to keep in mind, I am a strict American principled ideologue where I don't think there should be any, and I mean this, I don't think there should be any benefits that is orchestrated, manipulated, funded, and ultimately carried out by the government. If you want to have organizations that do this, and you want to have some form of senior care and health care, it should, in my world, it's all privatized, right?
Yeah, it's all voluntary. Understood.
What this sweeps under the rug is the real value in being an American citizen. And you see it in the arguments of today. They call it communism. They call it socialism, but that doesn't exist. That's nothing. What it means is if, in fact, you are a citizen of this country, and by default now, even if you're here and you're not a citizen, you're entitled to rent, food, health care, and walking around money. And if you're sick, or you say you are, we have very lax laws. You could be on disability your entire existence, and you walk around like a dog for doing nothing, and you live like my parents lived, or my family lived, making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. So when you have the entitlement system that makes you an instant millionaire, and I believe it does. You know, Robert, if you funge it out and you include education, we spend $1.4 trillion a year on public education. Well, what about me? I sent my kids to private school. I don't want $1 of that money. I got to pay it anyway. But my point is, when you're the taker of it all, when you take everything for free, when you take the food, when you take the rent, when you take the disability, what is it worth? $2 million? $1.7 million? So you're an instant millionaire by default if you navigate the system and you truly are no asset to your nation. You truly are a liability. That is the definition of a liability. So what we keep doing is we keep getting dragged down by liabilities. And the policies that are created by economic illiterates. They might be lawyers, but they're not very smart. And if they are, then they're in on it, right? And you've got this massive expansion of debt, and you're bankrupting my country in the name of something that I don't think even exists. You want to talk about fundamental documents of the Constitution. Where does it say I got to provide for everybody who says they can't provide for themselves? And you look at the fraud, and you look at the nonsense. So we have to stop it at the acorn. I do believe the acorn is the birthright fraud of illegal aliens, just a little bit of it. The rest of the acorn is the entitlement itself. But you're not helping it if we get dragged off in the philosophical argument, at least in my opinion, and you don't put into the context the hundreds of years we had of lawmakers in the form of a Congress.
Well, look, this is the inherent problem when people say we should effectively, they say open borders. They would no longer use that terminology. It was more common, and some people still say it. But, oh, come on, immigrants are great. My parents were immigrants. They passed. Sure. Legal immigrants. But, and, of course, all countries, maybe not all, but maybe, I don't know, let's say all countries need some level of immigration. But, of course, legal immigration. And if you think we need more immigration, then pass laws to increase immigration. But the one thing that is simple is that illegal immigration can't be tolerated. Why would you put the word illegal there, right? Like, if you think it's a good idea, change the policy. But don't tell people to break the law. And, of course, their first act of the people engaging in the illegal immigration is breaking our country's law. That's not a good way to set up a relationship with new people who come to this country.
No.
Go ahead. Did you want to say?
No. That's exactly correct.
Okay.
Your first decision is to break my law. Now you want me to be you're going to be my friend now? It's crazy.
I was just recounting to a friend of mine who's also an immigrant, legal, of course, that my father had a great notion that I'm sure I shared with you before. And we were debating some constitutional issues and political issues. My father was a very learned man. And he said, Rob, you can fight this or you can oppose that. And ultimately, your final resolution is to engage in revolution. And he said, I'm not suggesting it, but that's the last step. And I said, well, the same for you, because he seemed to say it in a way that distinguished me from him. And he said, well, no, that's not precisely right. He said, legally, I'm a citizen and I can whatever you can do. But I came here by choice and I asked to be a part of this country. You didn't ask. You were born here. And so I should never engage in revolution, because if I engage in revolution, I should just leave the same way I came. And that's, that is such an important notion. People that come here should view it as the gift that it is. And if you're breaking law at the first instance of your interaction with this great nation, you're not looking at it as the gift that it is.
No, it's exactly correct. And it reveals the mindset of the person who would break the law. And I think of this throughout everybody you've ever encountered. If you and I we're dear friends. And I said, you know what, Robert, we got to go. We're going to go. Where are we going to go? We're going to go to Norway. All right, well, how do you do it? Wouldn't that be the first thing you do? How do you do it?
Yeah. How do you do it? Exactly.
How do you do it? That's the number one thing you do. I don't mind. I'm sure the Norwegians don't care if we do it. If we say, how do we do it? We follow the rules. That's just what character is. And what we have in these areas that have declared themselves null and void of the federal law, they're called sanctuary areas, which still blows my mind. You've got entire governments that actually are using government workers to, in essence, intimidate federal government workers and not comply with law. So then the reality is, if I'm just a simpleton, we have no law. It's just if you get enough people that disagree with it, we can pretend that that's a legitimate argument. So you've got this scenario, but they destroy the quality of life. When you look at these areas and you look at the money laundering schemes that have been done in Chicago and New York and the rest of it, and then you look at what has happened to the quality of life, the people who come here do not know the rules because they didn't have to. So they don't know you can't cook on the street. They don't know you can't change in the police station. Whatever the case is, it drags down the entire standard and the mores of our civilization. And these areas are no longer civilized. They are truly third worlds. So this is something that we either are going to combat or we're going to ignore. And it's easy to ignore it, to not have the argument. But if you stretch out the argument in the proper way, it all boils down to the root problem of the policies that I rail against daily and that everybody rails against, because these are the policies that do not work and are bankrupting our nation. So ultimately, we're going to have to pick a lane to fight this entitlement argument, because it's more advantageous to be a taker than a maker. It's game over. It's just a matter of time, isn't it?
Well, that's math, right? And I'll build on what you said. That is, look, we are a country of Western civilization values, right? That's where we came from. We came from English values. We revolted against English, but we kept the values. And there are 1,000 years of history behind that. And, of course, we used to be a country that was the melting pot, which meant you came over here, you absorbed the environment, the values, and you maybe brought a little to it. That's why you also melted into it, right? And now it became something like a quilt where you're stitched in, but you're alone, right? You can see the stitching. That's not a good environment. That's not the way to run a country.
And, as you're talking, I'm thinking, talk about your parents and my grandparents and the rest of it. And you think about it. Every ethnicity, to a certain extent, has a very similar story. You could talk to an Irish family. You could talk to an Italian family. You could talk to a Polish family. You could talk to a Jewish family. Because at that time, what was absent? The benefit of being useless. When you hit here, up until very recently, you had to almost immediately be useful. You had to find your use. And every ethnicity had a certain pride factor, right? The Polish had a pride factor, the Irish, the Italian, whatever it is, there was a pride factor. So what is the pride factor against entire nationalities that came here illegally? Ultimately, it is what you're known for. So the pride factor among entire nationalities now, in the year 2026, is that they came here illegally and they got away with it. And now they get all this stuff. So you've got countries through Central and South America. You've got some countries in Europe, because this happens in Europe with Europeans too. And you definitely have Chinese that look at us as a mark, and they're proud of their own heritage and their own lineage that turned us into a mark. It's really fascinating psychologically how they almost refuse to comply. Because at a certain level, if you can read and you can work, you're refusing to comply. You're admitting, I don't have to comply. You want to take more than you're ever going to give. How could you see it any other way?
Well, I think, as we discussed just a moment ago, if your first interaction with a country is to break its laws, then your second interaction may be to exploit its benefits. That's the problem. You have to come right with the right attitude. I want to be a part of that. I want to emulate that. I don't want to lose my identity, but I want what that is, that being the American dream. And the American dream, of course, not being what some in other countries view it as now, which is the exploitation of our charity. The American dream is to come here, to work hard, and to be a part of society. When I was in New York, I had doctors of all ethnicities, but as you know, and your audience knows, I'm Jewish, and at least some of my doctors were Jews, because when Jews came to America, and I'm older now, and previous generations, they came and they educated their kids, and they said, you'll be a doctor, you'll be a lawyer, you'll be an accountant, very profession-oriented, not exclusively. I'm an academic. That's another area. Well, in Arkansas, the numbers are unclear, but there's only a few thousand Jews in the whole state. The whole state, of course, is only about 3 million plus people. But there's a real parallel to that demographic that I experienced as a kid, and it's, it is Indians and Pakistanis. Most of my doctors are Indians and Pakistanis, first or second generation American, come here legally. They're very pro-education, pro-developing their families' professional status, and it's the same model. It's exactly what you said. It's the exact same model.
So I'm curious to know how you see this Mangione thing, because I have to tell you, it's infuriating me, and I'll tell you why. He's celebrating.
Didn't he do that song, I Love New York? No,
that was the other one. This one, he looks like a cartoon character from Donkey Kong, this one. He is being celebrated as a celebrity because he killed this innocent CEO who was guilty. Yeah. Now, this is very interesting. He's guilty of social murder. I've been listening to these spokes idiots for the communist movement. So he's guilty of
social murder.
Social murder, right? Because if you're the CEO of an insurance, but who made the insurance company? The bad guy. Who made the premiums go up? Who made the regulations of which the insurance company has to ultimately say, I can't do it? It's Obamacare. Barack Obama, Jonathan Gruber, the Obama administration, and every senator that voted to pass the bill that made our healthcare system 1,000 times worse than it was prior to 2009. So why aren't they guilty of social murder? Why is it only the CEOs?
Well,
and doesn't it remind you of the German manipulation of the hatred against the Jew? I view it like this. Because don't forget, the Jew was the evil capitalist who would not conform. It reminds me very much of it.
Well, I think indeed you're even being too charitable to these folks envisioning this notion of social murder. Meaning, let's assume that the insurance companies or some other businesses are doing things that we don't like. What's an insurance company? It's a business that takes your money, pools it with other money, and is supposed to pay it out when certain events occur. Let's say they're cheating. Let's say they're doing bad behavior. Let's go even further. That doesn't give anybody the right to murder the head of the business. So then you enforce the law, right? Then you bring a civil action, or maybe there's criminal action that the government should bring. But you don't murder someone, and that's the disconnect. I just find baffling that this guy. He goes after and murders a CEO because let's assume, and to be clear, this is just for argument's sake, let's assume the company was doing something bad. That doesn't give you license to murder them.
No.
Sorry.
And it takes away everything that man did as an active citizen who was doing the right thing. That's why I love the fact that if anybody has any questions, they just look up Professor Robert Steinbuch at the... I really think it's fantastic. University of Arkansas, Little Rock. Where is, I know it's got Democratic in it, but tell everybody where the paper you write in.
I write a column in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. You can probably read a column or two for free, but you'll eventually hit a paywall, and then you'll have to decide how capitalistic you are.
Oh, I love it. You've worth every penny and then some. Thank you for always making time for me, my friend. I appreciate you.
God bless. Take care.
Thank you. You too. We'll be back with your calls and comments.
Call Shaun now. 312-642-5600.
American Custom Flooring and Niles is hosting a one-day customer appreciation event. Enjoy free food and drinks from 9 to 3 on Saturday, August 22nd. Save big on all countertops. Browse beautiful slabs on display, or peruse through hundreds of remnant pieces for smaller projects. If you've shopped for countertops before, you know the hassle. The person who sells the countertops isn't the one measuring, fabricating, or installing. At American Custom Flooring, your countertop orders are handled under one roof, and you'll work with the same person from start to finish. With a 20,000 square foot showroom and a 30,000 square foot warehouse, choose the perfect stone for your home. Plus, you won't pay for wasted material. Don't miss their one-day event, Saturday, August 22nd, or step into the showroom today, located just north of Howard and Caldwell in